Hello and welcome to How Not to Play Magic the Gathering. Today we are going to be going over the different mechanics and the draft archetypes of the new Universes Beyond set Lord of the Rings Tales of Middle-earth. Now this will be a fully draftable set. It is not going to be standard legal. It is just going to go straight to modern. But it is going to have draft packs, so you are going to have Lord of the Rings drafts. And so it's important to know what to look at as far as what cards you're going to be drafting and what the different archetypes are in the draft setting. So we're going to go ahead and go over those today, along with some of the returning and new mechanics in the Lord of the Rings set. So first of all, nothing too new or flashy. Izzet is going back to the Spells Matters archetype. So you're going to have the signpost card Gandalf's Sanction, which deals X damage to a creature, where X is the number of instants and sorceries in your graveyard. That's nothing new. We've seen that from Izzet time and time again. Something new, though, is that excess damage is dealt to that creature's controller, which this kind of trample on spells is something new that we've seen recently in Magic, and I think that's kind of neat. I kind of want to see more of that. But you're going to want to pair this up with other red and blue cards like Erebor Flamesmith, where whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, you get a payoff. In this case, you deal 1 extra damage to your opponent. So if you're going to be drafting Izzet or blue-red, these are the kind of cards you're going to look for. Red-white Boros gives us just a basic tribal deck. You're going to be on human aggro if you're looking towards the red-white plan. You're going to be looking for Theoden as your signpost card. Whenever he or another human enters the battlefield, a creature gains double strike. So basic aggro stuff. You're going to pair it up with different cards like Protector of Gondor, who is a human, and when he enters the battlefield, he creates a human. So you're going to want to look for this kind of go wide human strategy, and just basic aggro, keep low to the ground. These are going to be actually your top end cards, along with certain pump spells and possibly some anthem effects if you can get those drafted too. So that's definitely what you're going to look for on your Boros or red-white archetype. Continuing the tribal theme with Simic, with green-blue we get an elf theme. Now the elves kind of bring along with them this scry mechanic, so they're not necessarily as aggro as the human deck. They are looking to go more on a card advantage plan. So whenever you attack with Lothlorien Lookout, you'll scry a card. Whenever you scry one, you put a +1 counter on a creature with Arwen. And so if you see Arwen pop up as a signpost card, and you like the elf scry theme or subtype, then this is definitely a way to go. It is not going to be as quick, as flashy as the human aggro. It's going to be more mid-rangey maybe, where you're going to be looking at manipulating the top of your deck and making sure that you get value out of your scries. Selesnya is also on a kind of tribal deck. It is geared more towards halflings, or hobbits in this case, and the returning food token. So we all know that hobbits love their food, and that is what they tried to encapsulate in this green-white tribal deck. Oddly enough, their signpost card is a human and not a hobbit, but I mean, you can't have everything, right? But basically, you're going to be looking at creating a bunch of food tokens, using those to sustain your life through the early aggro, and getting into the late game where your powerful white and green finishers can clean up the board. Golgari, or black-green, is also on a food plan, but they're more on the sacrifice aspect of it. So you're not going to be necessarily using the food for life. You're going to be sacrificing your food tokens to cards like Old Man Willow, who, whenever he attacks, you can sacrifice a creature or a token, such as a food token, to give a creature an opponent controls -2 until end of turn. Very good removal. And then you've also got cards like Cirith Ungol Patrol. Whenever you sack a creature to this orc, you can draw a card, create a food token. You can use that food token then to sacrifice to Old Man Willow when he attacks, and things can just keep playing off of each other. And so that kind of create a food, sack a food synergy is what Golgari is going to be doing in this set. For red-green, we're going to have your basic generic Gruul aggro ramp deck. So you are going to be looking at dropping as much mana onto the field as you can. As you see with Strider Ranger of the North, they are bringing back the landfall mechanic. So whenever a land enters the battlefield, something happens. For Strider, target creature gains +1 until end of turn, and then possibly first strike. So, I mean, that's great. And what better way to get landfall than the return of the land cycling cards? We saw those last set with March of the Machine, and it is coming back here with Lord of the Rings. I really hope they have this as a recurring theme in draft. I love the ability of the cycling cards to splash colors and help fix mana in a draft format. And I think it would be interesting to see what it does long term in like a modern format. Would like land cycling decks become like a major thing? But you would use the different land cyclers or other ramp cards to make sure that you trigger your landfall all the way up into the late game, when just the bodies on these cycling cards can just take over the game. I mean, come on. A 6/4 trample that gives another creature +2 in trample, along with Strider's first strike. I mean, come on. Who's going to be able to stand up to that? Moving along to Orzhov, or white-black, we get the new mechanic in Lord of the Rings, Tales of Middle-earth, and that is The Ring Tempts You. So Orzhov is focusing more on this temptation mechanic. So we get, once again, kind of that go wide strategy that we saw with humans. So with Denethor, you get a bunch of humans. You can sacrifice creatures to leech life. And with the sorcery, now for Wrath, now for Ruin, you get a +1 counter, and the ring tempts you. But what does that actually mean, the ring tempts you? So the new mechanic in Lord of the Rings is, of course, the One Ring. So when the ring tempts you, you get this emblem named the Ring, if you don't already have one. And then your emblem gains an ability. If you have not already chosen a creature to become a ring bearer, you can choose a creature to become your ring bearer, and they will get whatever abilities the ring possesses. So, for example, if it's your first time getting tempted by the ring, then you can say, Denethor is my ring bearer. He is legendary and cannot be blocked by creatures with greater power than him. Now, the ring can tempt you even if you don't control a creature, you just don't choose a ring bearer. The ring gains the abilities in order from top to bottom. So the second time the ring tempts you, your ring bearer, whenever he attacks, you get to draw a card, discard a card. Its third ability, whenever the ring bearer becomes blocked by a creature, that creature's controller sacrifices it at an end of combat. So it's essentially Death Touch that gets around indestructible. And the fourth, final, and ultimate ability of the ring, whenever your ring bearer deals combat damage to a player, each opponent loses 3 life. So in a 1v1 format, it's just your opponent. In a multiplayer format like Commander, however, you'll deal 3 damage to the entire table. And these abilities stack. So if the ring has tempted you 4 times, you get all of these abilities. All on one creature. Additionally, each time the ring tempts you, you have the ability to choose a different ring bearer. Let's say the first time the ring tempts you, you put it on Denethor, because he might be the only creature you have out at the time. The second time the ring tempts you, you could put it onto a human token. And that human with base power of 1 is basically unblockable from the ring's first ability. And then if you get tempted all the way up to 4 times, that nearly unblockable 1/1 token can loot you a card every turn and do an extra 3 damage whenever it hits. So this has the potential to be a very strong mechanic in Limited. Granted, it's one that's going to take a few turns to ramp up to, so I'm not entirely sure how strong it's going to be. I don't really see it splashing into Constructed too much because of that wind-up period, and it will get absolutely wrecked by control and creature removal. Because in order to utilize the ring, you have to have a ring bearer. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with this mechanic in Constructed, if it gains any kind of foothold at all. Let me know in the comments what you think about this mechanic. But moving on with our archetypes, as we go to Azorius or white-blue, we see them focusing on evade and draw tribal, kind of. So a lot of white-blue creatures will have some form of evasion, most likely flying, as we see in a lot of white-blue decks. Focusing on flyers is always very, very strong. Flying basically reads as unblockable in draft. And not only that, but you can use a small draw spell like Birthday Escape to draw a card for 1 mana, and then Gwei here, the Windlord, will be 2 less to cast. So essentially, you can cast it for 5 instead of 6. But then you get that Lord effect that your other birds gain Vigilance, and of course, all of your birds are going to have flying, because what bird doesn't have flying? And then just that mass evasion that you can attack and block really sets white-blue to just dominate the late game. So if you like flyers, this is definitely the signpost and archetype for you. We also have another returning mechanic in Amass. Rakdos, or Black-Red, likes to use this Amass to create a huge orc army. So if you've got Easterling Vanguard, comes down, attacks in, dies, and then amasses your orc army. Maher Uruk-hai Captain, whenever a +1 counter would be put on an army, that many +1 are put on it instead. So instead of creating amass 1, it becomes amass 2. And that's just kind of for your entire board. So we see that going for more of an orc tribal would really work for Rakdos, but that's not really what they're trying to do. They're trying to make this really big, really powerful orc army. The downside to Amass is that this army is only 1 creature. So it does tend to be chump blocked into oblivion if your opponent is on some kind of go wide token deck. I really wish that the Amass army token had trample. That would, I think, make it better. Because we haven't really seen Amass take off in any kind of constructed format, mostly because it is only 1 creature. Even though it's got all these +1 counters on it to get bigger and bigger every turn, that 1 creature can get chump blocked, that 1 creature can get removed, and so it's really weak to like removal like that. But in a limited format, when bombs are maybe more scarce, removal isn't always available, you can really see this Amass token grow out of control and really pressure your opponent. And finally, Dimir, or Blue-Black, also uses the Amass, but in a slightly different way. Instead of creating your Amass creature and really being aggressive with it and pushing through damage, Dimir is going to wait its time. It's going to mill your opponent with Mouth of Sauron. It's going to use a more controlling strategy with Saruman's Trickery to keep the opponent from not really doing a whole lot while this army is being amassed, and then protecting it with counter spells, clearing the opponent's board with removal, and then just really kind of waiting for the right time to push and attack. And so whereas Rakdos is going to use that army to just bludgeon your opponent with, Dimir is going to use that Amass token more surgically. Wait for the right time, and then just hit when you can get an overwhelming value with it. And so those are the different recurring and new mechanics that you'll see in Lord of the Rings. Those are the 10 draft archetypes. So let me know in the comments below, what's your favorite? Which mechanic has you excited about this set? Or are you just happy to be in Middle Earth? Because honestly, I don't care what I draft. I'm just excited to have a Lord of the Rings in my Magic, and I am going to go so broke playing this set. I have loved Tolkien since I was a kid. This is like my favorite game with my favorite nostalgia, all wrapped up in a nice little bow, and my bank account is not going to thank me for this. But hey, put a like on this video if you're excited about Middle Earth like I am, and let me know in the comments below your favorite archetypes, your favorite mechanics, and I will see you in the next video.